The field is set for the race to become your next U.S. Senator, and the last candidate to join the field is shaking up the campaign.
What mattered most to me was, number one, that I wasn't far off, which my polling said that.
This week, we dig deeper into the race for Senate and what Texas voters say they want from the candidates.
Because I know it's you, the taxpayers of Texas, that are demanding this reform.
Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick are each touting plans to cut property taxes in Texas. But there's a key question.
Where will the money come to fund any kind of government except sales tax?
The competing visions to lower your taxes and why it could create a conflict between the state's top leaders. Politics without the fight. A Texas group is trying to make that a reality.
The demonizing of the others, the us versus them, there's real fatigue around that.
The new approach happening now to bring people together for real solutions.
Produced from the Capitol in Austin and airing statewide, this is the award-winning State of Texas.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. The filing deadline brought a big shakeup in the race for U.S. Senate seat in Texas. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett officially launched her campaign. The announcement from the high-profile politician is reshaping the race for both Democrats and Republicans. Capitol correspondent Dylan McKim takes a closer look.
The poll from Texas Southern University shows Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has an 8-point lead over State Rep. James Tallarico. A big reason for her lead is overwhelming support from black voters. The poll shows 9 out of 10 black voters support her. Tallarico has been able to stay within striking distance by getting large support from white and Latino men. The silver lining for Tallarico, though, 1 in every 5 Democratic primary voter does not know who he is, which means he has room to grow. A spokesman for his campaign said, quote, "Polling consistently shows that the more people get to know James, the more they support him. We asked him this week how he's trying to grow his brand."
We've been to big cities and small towns. We've been to red areas and blue areas alike, and we're meeting people one-on-one. We're hearing about their hopes and their dreams and their fears.
But a challenge for Tallarico is that a huge portion of voters who don't know him are black voters, a group that strongly supports Crockett. The poll also showed voters believe she can mobilize infrequent Democrat voters to go to the poll, but they think Tallarico can get Republican crossover votes. On Friday, Crockett said in a statement, quote, "I'm in the best position to mobilize voters who've been overlooked, ignored, and excluded." She also noted in her campaign launch that Republican voters have asked her to run for Senate.
Because people are looking for real people. They are tired of these politicians that are being told what to say, when to say, and how to say it. They want somebody that they believe is real and is going to fight for them.
However, Mark Jones, a co-author of the poll, said those two strategies are in some ways mutually exclusive.
The more that you focus in on the base and try to mobilize these low propensity voters to turn out, the more you may alienate moderate Republicans and independents who you might want to cross over.
Jones also added both Democrat candidates will likely have a tough general election matchup.
Simply because Texas remains a relatively Republican state where the GOP nominee starts off every election with about an 8 to 10 point advantage.
But Jones did say anything can happen in a year to change the general election. One thing is clear, though. The Democratic primary will be a tight race all the way up to March. Dylan McKim, State of Texas.
We want to dig a little deeper into the Senate race. Joining us now is Jim Henson, the director of the Texas Politics Project at the University of Texas. Welcome.
Great to be here, Josh.
Well, I know that you've been busy with all of this and you've conducted polling on both James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett. What do we know about what voters think about these two candidates?
Well, you know, if we're talking about Democratic voters in the primary, we know that both are viewed very favorably by, people that are likely to vote in Democratic primaries. Jasmine Crockett's rise has been somewhat meteoric in a lot of ways, and so I think when we started polling on her position or favorability ratings in the fall, surprised to see just how well known she is for somebody who's never run statewide. James Tallarico still has to reach out and establish himself with more Democratic voters. I don't think he's going to have too hard a time doing that. With Jasmine Crockett, I think it's a matter of, holding the fort in a way and not making mistakes in a way that I think some observers are anticipating. She's a very hot personality. They've each got strengths and weaknesses in the Democratic base they have to work on. Jasmine Crockett running very strongly among progressives, but particularly among black voters, and with Colin Allred out of the race now, she's inherited, I think, a default black vote in this. James Tallarico running much stronger among men than among women, although he's doing okay with that. So they each have to kind of look at the other and try to eat a little bit into the other's coalition.
So that's the Democrats. We
Yep.
also have a Republican Senate primary that's very crowded with three major candidates. That's incumbent John Cornyn, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and Congressman Wesley Hunt. Where do those three men stand now with Republican voters?
Well, with Republican voters, Paxton is still the preferred candidate compared to the other two. In our polling, when we compared their favorability ratings in the fall, Paxton viewed favorably by about 10% more of Republicans than Cornyn is, which is kind of remarkable given how long Cornyn has been around. Wesley Hunt complicates this in terms of the possibility that he sends this race into a runoff. But I think we're still looking at Ken Paxton enjoying an advantage among a very, very conservative Republican electorate that also, I think, appreciates Paxton's style, more aggressive, a little hotter, a little more MAGA aligned than they do Cornyn, who again has long been judged by a lot of the most conservative activists in the Republican Party in the last decade as insufficiently conservative. That's not reflected really in his voting record, but nonetheless it's the rap on him.
So the economy and affordability are two issues that are seeming to dominate a lot of these political conversations. How does that look for Texas voters? Are those the top concerns as well? Absolutely.
Particularly among independents and Democrats, but also among an increasing share of Republicans. For example, in the fall, in both our August and our October polls, when we asked Texans about their economic concerns, consistently the top three concerns by a large margin are, basically the price of everyday goods, the price of housing, the price of healthcare. Healthcare obviously being very activated right now as a political issue. I think that's really the issue to watch as we go into 2026. I think we're not going to hear a ton about these issues in these primary elections, which are going to be much more inwardly focused in each party. But once we get through the primaries, unless something really monumental changes in the economy in a positive direction, the economy is just going to dominate the discussion in 2026. And all of the campaigns are going to have to find an effective way to speak to that.
Be here before you know it.
Very close.
Jim Henson, Texas Politics Project, thank you for being with us.
Great to be with you, Josh, as always.
Politics often feels like a battlefield, but what if it didn't have to?
We realized that us versus them really meant that you weren't going to get to any sort of meaningful solutions.
A new movement says it's time to build, not fight. Find out how they're bringing that mission to Texas. Two powerful proposals aim to reshape your tax bill, but the governor and lieutenant governor take different paths to reach that goal. We look closer at the conflict over plans to help Texans save money.